Serious, what is your personal unresolved mystery? How many times my father was married and how many kids he really had. I found his obituary this year and it only mentions 2 wives. No mention of my mother, me or my sisters. Those DNA kits help Piapa find relatives all the tea. Me. Also pies help with this. It's some options anyway. Yep. I had several relatives discover close relatives that we never knew we had. How many women my biological father has had a kid with? In total, there is 17 of us. 17. Some of us either have physical or mental disorders, are semi-normal, or are a twin/triplet, give or take. I used to be roommates with this guy, who was in his 60s, and had at least 12 kids that he knew about, ranging in age from 45 to 15. The only child that he raised for any length of time was his youngest daughter, and he became a single father after her mother developed schizophrenia and had to be relocated to a group home. For her own and her daughter's safety, he was obviously trying to do right by his youngest daughter, and I respect that. But he had a lot of issues. He seemed to have missed some basic life lessons you're supposed to learn when you're young, like fire safety and food safety. He would turn on all the burners on the stove in the winter, rather than turning on the radiator or a space heater. He would also leave a pot of rice on the stove for days after it was cooked, and just scoop some more out whenever he was hungry. I'm not even sure if he picked out the mold first. Shudder. The mold is nutritious. At my childhood home there was a chain buried in our front yard that we found while digging up plastic anti-weed sheets. Because we were digging up the garden, I was allowed to see how deep the chain went. I got to around 5 feet deep before we started planting over it, and I had to fill in the hole. I never found out what it was for, or how deep it went, or what it could be attached to. Me and my friends rented a house. I had lived there for a while with my parents. They moved out, so I brought my friends in. One day my buddy Cole and I are walking around checking out the property, and we find this piece of plywood covering a hole that's kind of backed up into some blackberry brambles. He asks what it's covering up, and I decide to duck with him, and I look him straight in the eye and say there's nothing under there, don't worry about it. Apostrophe. He keeps asking, and finally I go, Cole, if you value this friendship at all you will drop this conversation and forget that you saw anything here. Apostrophe. A few years later he tells me he finally checked under the plywood, and I'm like, dude, I ducking hope so. Apostrophe. My family moved to a new town when I was 8 or 9. Our first Halloween there 2 people showed up at our door in dark hooded cloaks, hiding their faces. They handed my mom a card saying guess who we are. You get 3 guesses, and they barged past my mom, walked across the living room, and sat down on the couch. Mom was a little freaked that 2 grown adults would walk into our home uninvited, but she played along. My mom guessed her coworker at work and his wife. The figures shook their heads. I guessed one of my dad's fellow teachers, who was always doing odd things, and his wife. They shook their heads again. I forget who the third guess was, but as soon as we said it, they stood up from the couch and drifted across the living room again and out the door. Freaked my mom so much she called my dad at work. No one ever admitted to being those 2 mysterious figures. It's been 30 plus years. My mom's gone now, and I still bring it up with people from that town, but no one stepped forward still to this day. Whoa, that is a crazy story. Sounds freaky. I found out about a year ago it's a tradition called bellsnickling. Something like mummers who go from house to house making people guess house in disguise. On my old Reddit account somebody sent me a private message out of the blue with my full name, city, and place of work. I still have no idea who the hell it was, but I panic deleted my account within about 5 seconds. Probably a real life friend of yours who found your Reddit profile and wanted to troll you. Or you might have accidentally fell for an IP grabber. I still can't figure out how to get someone's identity from their IP. My BO father had a daughter before he met my mum, but she got put up for adoption. I've always wanted to meet her and get to know her. I guess it's not really a mystery as such, but it's what sprung to mind when I saw this post. Him named after the daughter my grandma had and placed for adoption when she was 16. Since it was the 50s and grandma won't talk about it, I don't know much. My mom wasn't even supposed to know. but my great grandmother told her, and one night, when she was drunk she told me, my great aunt had a baby at 16. She put her up for adoption, right after she was born. Was closed adoption. No one was supposed to know about it. But, in these great times, we have ancestry. The daughter did it, and it showed we connected. After talking with a great uncle, he confirmed it was her daughter. Great aunt and uncle, brother, and sister are now late 90s. Great aunt will not meet the daughter. All these years later, a lot of the family is friends with the daughter on Facebook. They live not too far from each other. It's really sad. I think I would like to know what happened in the couple minutes I apparently had lost consciousness and stopped breathing, or a cause to it. I have a particular piece of Jewish DNA, and an aunt who speaks Yiddish, and a great grandmother who apparently covered the mirrors on Friday nights. No one on that side of the family will admit to being Jewish. Where did my aunt learn Yiddish? Then, there's a possibility your family was one of the many families that left Europe and hid or abandoned their religious beliefs in order to escape being prosecuted and killed back in their country of origin. I worked with a German girl who had no family history before her grandparents in the 40s. Her theory was that they were Jewish people who got fake kids in order to survive and just used them the rest of their lives. What happened to all the fine jewelry my grandma gave me when I was a kid? Did I lose it like my mom said, or did she sell it for rent money? If that's a question you have to ask, you likely know the answer. It took a while to realize that, but yeah. Thanks for confirming my thoughts. Who ate the giant cookie? My wife made cookies and made one large one with what was remaining. I saw it that evening before I went to bed, and it was gone the next day. No one would fess up to who ate it. I didn't care. Thought it was funny. Who ate that entire cookie? It was me. I'm sorry. It was delicious. I had a friend in senior year who on the day school ended he stole his father's car and split. No warning to anyone. No mention of where he was going. Never did find out why he did it or where he wound up. It sounds to me like he was escaping an abusive/toxic home environment. The best way to leave an abusive home is with no warning, so the abuser or abusers can't scuttle your plans. He might have seemed normal and happy, but abuse victims can hide it very well. What the hell my family did to justify the Church of England blocking records from 1200s or so? Apostasy possibly? 10 years ago, my family was in a motor vehicle collision. It was very, very bad. Even though an autopsy was performed on the other driver, no reason was given by the police as to why she suddenly crossed the highway into our lane. Some people said she was going blind. Others wondered if she fell asleep or was blinded by the sun. I'll never know for sure. Was she old? I just wondered with the blind thing. That must have been so traumatic for you all. Even small crashes are scary. Yeah. She was in her early to mid 80s. And there were rumors in the town I lived in about her sight going and nearly hitting a snowplow at one point. I can't confirm or deny if any of that is true, though. Supposedly DHS was called on my mom at 99. The only person who ever asked me about home was my school counselor. The judge didn't want me or my sister living with mom anymore. Why didn't they investigate more? She was physically and emotionally abusive. I didn't even know there was an investigation till recently. I just want to know why I wasn't questioned more and how my mom managed to not lose custody. I prayed for years that someone would call and I would get out. Could be that someone noticed something, like bruises or an offhand comment, and figured it was either too urgent to wait or too clear to even bother asking you. Not saying they were in the right, but it could explain it. It's likely our neighbors called because we lived in a duplex and she was always screaming at us for normal kid stuff because that's how her parents were. She knew how to not leave bruises and the emotional abuse was always way worse. It sucked and I'm still healing, but the important thing I keep reminding myself is I broke the cycle with my own kid. He is happy and healthy. I'm not a perfect mom by any means, but I'm 1,000 times better than my own mom who still doesn't understand why I want nothing to do with her. Who's the old man who told me not to get on the next bus? What's wrong with the bus? And how did he know my full name? Could it have been you from the future? Who killed the young teen who sometimes swam with us in the summer? She was the niece of the people across the backyard fence. We would invite her to come swimming with us as we had a pool. We moved. That summer, she was out hanging up the wash when someone snuck into the house, raped, killed her, and stuffed her in a closet. Murderer has never been found, and I can find no info on it at all. Happened around 1974. When I was in middle school, someone doorbell ditched me a gift bag of gift cards. We saw the car drive away, and it didn't look like anyone we knew. There were about $200 in gift cards for me. Coming from a family of 7 that was in a cult, meaning 10% of our income went to the church, $200 was a huge gift. I remember going to Mervyn's and buying brand new clothes and shoes when I usually had to buy from the thrift store. I still wonder to this day about who it was that gave me that gift. A cousin of mine was Mormon. The church would drop off charity like this sometimes, especially if they were having a crisis of faith. This is what I was thinking. Southern Baptists do it too. More out of charity than the crisis of faith part though. My grandma had dementia the last several years of her life. After my grandpa died, one of the crazy things she said was he was living down the hall with his girlfriend. She was in a nursing home, and they had a baby together. I've always wondered if that was just crazy dementia stuff, or if there was an element of truth to it. Dementia patients often return to their prime of their life. So ones that were in their early 20s during the Great Depression steal and stash food sometimes and believe they are in that time. So maybe that's how they met, and he left a woman for your grandma. Or could just be the whole dementia mixing reality and fiction. I've always seen them go back as children, often crying in the corner because their mum doesn't know where they are. Sometimes they ask me to take them home before mum gets angry because they've missed dinner. Or they will ask me to call their mothers and let them know where they are. Sometimes they will tell me about a fight they had with their parents or siblings, as if it had just happened. One day I found a woman sitting on a chair and sobbing. I asked her if she was okay and she replied, "My sister pushed me into the fence and I'm bleeding. Can you take a look at it, because it really hurts?" Apostrophe. She showed me her elbow and sure enough there was a very noticeable scar. I have a mark on my body that my family tells me is a birthmark, yet it doesn't appear on any of the photos of me as a baby. I still don't know what this is mark and when/how I got it. Sometimes birthmarks can show up months after the birth. Happened for both my kids. One of my dogs had bona fide goddamned panic attacks. They always happened at night. After we'd both been sleeping for a while, I'd wake up hearing him hyperventilating and pacing. His heart would be racing. I finally figured out that, as long as he could get out of my bedroom, he'd leave for a while, calm down and come back fine, jump back up on the bed, go back to sleep, and wake up fine. Went on for years. Never figured out the cause. They stopped when we moved. WTF. Nightmares? My dog will occasionally wake up in the middle of the night and act like she's in desperate need of comfort, different from the usual doggy seeking attention behavior. Not sure if it would explain how it stopped when you moved though. More my friend. But I still think about it. He had a backpack full of tools in his truck for work. One day he went to work, and while going to grab his backpack it was gone. The weird thing was that whoever took it dumped the tools out and just took the backpack. Who and why? Did someone just steal the backpack and not the tools? Someone really needed that backpack, but didn't want to steal. One of my 2 goldfishes suddenly vanished. I never found it. I had a tank of Tetris, sucker fish, and a black goldfish. Slowly the 24-strong group of Tetris started to dwindle until it became impossible to not notice that half the school was missing and no signs of bodies. Put 2 and 2 together and realized the black goldfish that swam with its mouth open like a hoover was likely snacking on them at night. Whether or not the man who I grew up thinking was my father wasn't. Mine wasn't. No loss for me, though. And I'd gained a family. When doing my family tree I quickly found out that my paternal line, my father to my grandfather to his father, ends at my great-great-great-grandfather, and then there is no other information. Other genealogists, amateur and professional, with my last name have all researched and no one has found definitive proof of where that line continues. But there is one lead. A man with my same last name, but who isn't directly linked to my family. has a record of debt 2 years before an apparent adoption of my great X3 grandfather. It's highly possible that man was his father and something happened with the debt that perhaps ended badly. But there's no other link to my family, and there were a few different lines of my last names in the area that branched out, which makes it more difficult to pin down who belongs to which line. My last name is kind of weird and I've literally never met anyone else that has it in person, so it's frustrating that lineage seems lost in records. If I can ask, was this in a rural/frontier area of the United States at the time? As an historian with my own interest in genealogy with a similar family name that just seems to spit out an ancestor at 30 and getting married, that's a problem I've run into as well. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.